So, Underwater joins a long line of films like The Abyss and Leviathan and Deep Blue Sea of a bunch of people who go down to the bottom depths of the ocean and then find a creature that comes out to kill them all while they have to find a means of escape. Now, we've been down this ride before. And I'll say this, if you've never been that won over by just, the atmosphere and the terror and the excitement of, running around, corridors bursting with water and steam and rubble and trying to escape creatures that are trying to eat you and tear your insides out, probably not a lot here to engross you too much here. This was directed by William Eubank, who previously directed The Signal. And he's got some somewhat interesting introspective ideas that kind of start off the film, but then don't really come that much to the surface. Like, it starts off kind of a little bit contemplative, but it doesn't take very long for the film to just rush right into the action. Like, we meet Kristen Stewart's character of Nora Price. We hear a little bit that, she's a cynic. She has a lover, and she has a very particular viewpoint of working in this rig at like the bottom of the ocean. And then barely before she's finished brushing her teeth and we're accustomed to her, the rig starts just exploding. Everything starts crumbling, water starts bursting out. There's earthquakes abound, there's something happening and nobody knows what's going on. And she's just making a mad dash with a collective of survivors trying to get out of this place alive. Now, naturally, they run into creatures along the way here. They pick up, they pick up a group of survivors, and then, it's basically kind of a survival slasher film at that point. Who will make it out alive in the end. So, the cast that they have here, they're fairly, typical archetypes that we've seen. You have Vincent Castle here as the captain, who basically makes the tough calls and wants to keep going, and, maybe he'll make a sacrifice along the way. T.J. Miller plays Paul, who's basically T.J. Miller, the wisecracker again. Long time since we've seen T.J. Miller. Let's see, we have Jessica Henwick plays Emily, who's kind of the meek, I don't think I could do this, I don't know if I'll survive. And then you have John Gallagher as Liam Smith, who's basically along for the ride. As well as a few other characters played by I'm going to screw up this name here, so I'm going to read it out. Mamoru Athey and Gunnar Wright as well. So who will live and who will die, I can't really say because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But I will say this. This film is all about the atmosphere. It is about establishing that you're trapped in this environment, and everything seems against you. The oxygen's running out, everything is crumbling, you're going to have to make mad dashes, stuff is going to break around you. Creatures that you're not quite sure how to deal with are going to pop out of nowhere, and you're going to have to try to find a way around them, or try to defeat them, or try to kill them, or just, avoid their presence. So it's all about that atmosphere. And for being that, I know for a lot of people, that is going to push them off, because it has it doesn't really have, on its surface level, it doesn't really have any grander ideas than just that. It's just a simplistic, trapped in an enclosed environment survival type picture. But for being a little more than that, I gotta admit, it won me over pretty well. I really love how the soundtrack has kind of this great balance of kind of metal and synth that brilliantly build it up. It sets a fairly predictable atmosphere, but one that I kind of love. It's been a while since I've kind of felt that sort of gritty sense of trying to survive. I like the fact that in order to escape this rig, it doesn't involve them just going down familiar corridors. It involves them actually crawling through rubble. And taking apart machinery that breaks down and crumbles and explodes all around them. It relies on suits that look cool, but they can break easily, and they can one of the characters actually implodes and just explodes all over the place. So I like that they don't skimp on the violence here and the gore and the terror. Which is great. I mean, if you want that kind of slasher survival film, that's the kind of stuff you want. You want it to feel just bloody and horrifying. And they do a pretty good job at weaving it here. Kristen Stewart, I think, works pretty well for a character who, like, she seems like she has a bit of a past but doesn't talk about it too much. And indeed, there are a few moments where the characters kind of talk about their past just a little bit, just so that they can, maintain some sense of humanity and put stuff in perspective. So there's a little bit of a breathing room here. But they don't divulge it too much. Like, they know where the strength in this type of film lies. And, how many, like, these survival type films have we heard, like, I got someone waiting on the surface for me, or, I had this relationship that didn't quite go anywhere, or, I'm struggling with this part of my past. A lot of this stuff is fairly subtle, which I kind of admire about the film. For a lot of people, I know that's going to push them off because it's going to feel like, they didn't take advantage of these bigger aspects. But for embracing, just the whole creature feature aspect, which a lot of the creatures they reveal here are kind of cool. I like that they got these giant mouths that can basically eat these characters who are wearing, like, underwater suits. So they basically get to see the insides of their mouths. They got to crawl out of these creatures. They lose limbs to them. They have to flee from them. They get whipped all around the place. And a pretty, I gotta admit, like, you kind of suspect where the ending of this film is going, but still, there's such a grit to it. Like, I love, like, Kristen Stewart's final lines in the film. They're pretty awesome for what they're going for here. The giant reveal of, like, the true form of the creature was pretty cool. And just the general atmosphere of just, sparks flying and rubble going off everywhere and just suits failing and oxygen levels getting really low and everything is, being destroyed around you that you got to make, leaps of faith and you got to jump all over the place. I kind of dug. Now, for a lot of people too, and I keep putting these as, like, qualifiers here, and I'm trying to, like, set this up. If you do not dig B-movie creature features, this film is not for you. If you didn't dig stuff like The Abyss and Leviathan and stuff like Deep Blue Sea, I'm telling you, this is not your film. However, if you do like those types of films, which I do, then this film actually kind of works for me. Like I said, Kristen Stewart has, like, that perfect grit, as, especially for like a woman who has to run around in her underwear for most of the film. I like the fact she's got, like, lots of scars on her face. She's got, like, that shaved head, so she feels like she's very aerodynamic and built for the environment. And I love just, like, watching her just run down corridors and make tough calls. And still show that she has a little bit of humanity, where, she's not quite willing to abandon people when she thinks they might be lost. And all the other actors, they're good, but like I said, they're pretty much locked in these tropes of this genre that they can't really do too much, especially if they want to maintain that presence of, who will live and who will die and not make it too obvious. Like, sometimes they'll say, like, oh, this character seems like he'll be around for a while. Or this character, says, like, I don't think I'll survive. Well, maybe they will survive, because if they didn't, then it'd be too obvious. The film does play around with that aspect fairly well, where it's not that predictable. It is edited quite chaotically, especially the underwater sequences, when they're basically running around the ocean floor, where they're in the dark. They basically can't tell where they are half the time. They got to follow markers, and they might get lost along the way. And then there are creatures coming out of the dark, just pulling them into the darkness and pulling them into the rubble and just ripping off limbs. It gets pretty chaotic at times and pretty hard to follow. And I know for a lot of people it's going to put them off, but I got to admit, for creating that sort of tension, I kind of like the film. For being little more than a B-movie creature feature, I actually really dug this film. It has a great atmosphere here. There's a lot of little details here and there. I love that it kind of, like, trims the fat of, delving into, like, the melodrama of these characters and just goes straight into survival mode with that great, gritty atmosphere. So yeah, I pretty much dug the film. So, for Underwater, 3 out of 5 stars.